Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that will change the way you face every battle in your life. Right now, some of you are standing at the edge of giving up. The weight is heavy, the nights are long, the prayers feel like they are bouncing off the ceiling. But listen carefully, this moment right here might be the very turning point heaven is waiting for. You see, too many people stop one prayer too soon. They quit when the ground shakes, but before the walls fall. They stop when the storm rages, but before the sun breaks through. My friend, the difference between defeat and victory is often just one more prayer, one more cry from the depth of your soul. That's why I came to tell you today, don't quit until you pray through. Because when you pray through, you push past the noise of doubt, past the fear that tells you it's over, past the pain that says you can't go on. You step into the realm where heaven and earth collide, where your faith connects with God's power, and the answer is birthed in your spirit before it even shows up in your circumstances. Some of you are asking, why hasn't God answered yet? Could it be because He's waiting to see if you truly believe, if you'll hold on when everything in you says to let go? The victory isn't always in the instant result. It's in the persistence that shapes your faith, strengthens your spirit, and aligns your heart with heaven's timing. So I challenge you today, no matter the tears, no matter the silence, no matter how long it takes, pray until peace floods your soul. Pray until the burden lifts. Pray until heaven gives you the assurance that the answer is on its way. Don't quit. Don't stop. Don't let go. Because the moment you pray through, you will know God has heard, God has moved, and your breakthrough is closer than you think. Life has always been a battlefield, not just in the sense of physical struggles or outward conflicts, but deep in the unseen realm where forces of doubt, fear, faith, and hope wrestle for control of the human heart. There is a battle that rages in the spirit every single day, and many times it is not the loud voices of people around you that threaten to crush your courage, but the quiet whispers of despair, the knowing thoughts that tell you to give up, the silent weight pressing on your chest in the middle of the night saying, it's not worth it anymore. That is where the real war takes place. It's in the secret places where no one sees the tears you cry. It's in the private moments when no one knows how close you are to letting go, and yet it's in that very place that victory is either won or lost long before you ever see it on the outside. When life throws its heaviest storms, prayer becomes the lifeline. Not the casual prayer you mutter on the run, not the quick words you speak half-heartedly, but the kind of prayer that comes from the depths of your being, the kind that shakes heaven because it first shook you. This is where so many people miss it. They think prayer is simply about asking God for things as though He were a distant stranger you write a request to and then walk away. But prayer is not a polite conversation. It is a battle. It is a cry from the soul that refuses to surrender. It is the voice of someone who will not stop knocking on heaven's door until God Himself responds. I have seen people pray when things were easy, when the sun was shining, when blessings were flowing. But the true test of prayer is when everything goes dark. When you pray and nothing changes, when you pray and the sickness gets worse, when you pray and the bank account empties, when you pray and relationships crumble anyway, that's when you find out whether your prayer is just a habit or whether it is the very breath of your spirit. Because in the battle of life, prayer is not about saying the right words. It's about staying on your knees until something in you shifts, until you know deep in your soul that God has heard you even if the world hasn't changed yet. Some of the greatest victories in history were won by people who refused to quit praying even when it looked like all hope was gone. They understood something we often forget. There are forces in the unseen realm that only move when persistence meets faith. When you feel resistance, doesn't mean God hasn't heard you. It means you are pushing against the very walls that have kept your breakthrough locked up. And walls don't fall at the first touch. They fall after relentless, determined, unshakable persistence. They fall when faith refuses to quit. Think about it. A soldier doesn't walk off the battlefield because the fight is hard. A runner doesn't leave the race because the finish line feels too far away. A farmer doesn't stop planting because the rain hasn't come yet. Why? Because they know something will happen if they stay the course. In the same way, you cannot quit praying simply because the answer hasn't come. There is a spiritual law at work here. Persistence in prayer breaks barriers that casual words never will. It wears down the resistance of the enemy. It builds up the strength of your spirit. And it aligns your heart with the will of God in ways nothing else can. Some people ask, but why doesn't God answer right away? Why does He let me keep struggling? Friend, there is something about the process of praying through that changes you even before it changes your circumstances. It takes your faith from shallow waters into the deep places where you learn to trust God's character even when you can't trace His hand. It strips away the pride that thinks we can fix things ourselves. It humbles us until we lean fully on Him. And sometimes it is only when we are completely emptied of our own strength that His power flows freely through us. The waiting, the battling, the pressing through, it is shaping you, strengthening you, preparing you for the very answer you are asking for. I have watched people give up in the final moments before the answer came. They walked away because it was too hard, because it took too long, because they thought silence meant no. But silence is not absence. Delays are not denials. And what looks like heaven holding back might actually be heaven setting things in place for a greater miracle than you even asked for. That is why you cannot quit in the middle of the battle. You have to fight through the doubt, through the fear, through the exhaustion until your spirit touches God in such a way that you know, whether it takes 1 more day or 10 more years, He has heard, He has moved, and His answer is coming. Prayer that breaks through doesn't always change the situation immediately, but it changes you. It lifts the weight off your shoulders before the burden is even gone. It gives you peace in the middle of the storm before the winds ever stop blowing. It gives you joy in the night before the sun ever rises. Because something happens when you push past the point of convenience into the place of persistence. Something shifts when you refuse to let go until God blesses you, like Jacob wrestling with the angel through the long hours of the night saying, I will not let you go until you bless me. That is the heart of praying through. That is the spirit that wins battles in the unseen realm. So today, if you are in the fight of your life, if the walls look too high, if the night feels too long, hear this, you are not losing because it is hard. You are not failing because you feel weak. The battle in the Spirit is not won by those who never fall down, but by those who refuse to stay down. Lift your voice one more time. Cry out one more time. Stand your ground one more time, because the breakthrough belongs to those who pray through. And the battle always turns when you refuse to quit. There is a mystery about heaven that many people don't fully understand. It is not that God cannot answer instantly. He spoke the worlds into being in a single breath. He parted the Red Sea in a moment. He raised the dead with one command. He is not limited by time, distance, or circumstance. But for reasons woven deep into the fabric of faith, there are times when heaven seems to wait until persistence has had its perfect work. And this waiting is not because God is cruel or indifferent. It is because something happens in the human heart, something powerful and eternal, when we refuse to give up in prayer, even when nothing seems to be changing. There is a kind of faith that heaven responds to, a faith that holds on when it hurts, a faith that believes when it cannot see, a faith that knocks and keeps on knocking until the door swings wide open. The Bible tells of a widow who kept coming to the unjust judge day after day, pleading for justice. At first he ignored her. He turned her away. He thought he could outlast her cries, but she refused to quit. She kept coming until finally, even though he neither feared God nor respected people, he granted her request simply because of her persistence. If an unjust judge will answer because someone refuses to quit, how much more will the God of heaven respond to His children who cry out to Him day and night? That's the heart of this truth. Heaven moves when you don't give up. So many prayers go unanswered, not because God doesn't want to answer them, but because people stop praying before the answer comes. They start strong, they pray with passion for a while, but when the waiting stretches on, when the silence lingers, when the problem doesn't break immediately, they begin to pull back. Doubt slips in like a thief in the night whispering, maybe God didn't hear you. Maybe He doesn't care. Maybe it's not going to happen. And slowly, what was once a bold cry of faith becomes a faint whisper of resignation until finally the prayer stops altogether. That's what the enemy wants, to silence your prayers, to make you give up before the breakthrough arrives, to convince you that waiting means nothing is happening. But the truth is often the opposite. The longer the battle, the greater the victory on the other side. Some of the greatest answers from heaven come right at the point where you feel like you can't go on. It's as though heaven waits for that moment when your strength is gone, when you are praying not out of routine, but out of desperation, when your pride has fallen away and all that is left is raw faith clinging to God alone. That's when things start to shift, because heaven moves in response to faith, and faith that refuses to quit is the faith that shakes mountains and opens impossible doors. Do you remember Daniel in the Old Testament? He prayed for 21 days before the angel finally appeared with the answer. But the angel told him something remarkable. From the first day you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before God. Your words were heard. Did you hear that? The answer had been released from heaven the very first day Daniel prayed, but opposition in the spiritual realm had delayed its arrival. If Daniel had stopped praying on day 10 or day 15, he would have never seen the fulfillment. Heaven had already moved. but persistence was required to bring the answer through. That is why you can never assume silence means nothing is happening. Heaven might already be at work, arranging circumstances, defeating spiritual opposition, setting things in motion that your eyes cannot yet see. That's why giving up is so dangerous. When you quit praying, you might be walking away on the very edge of your miracle. You might be surrendering just moments before the answer comes. It's like digging for treasure and stopping one shovel of dirt before you hit the gold. Heaven moves when faith refuses to quit, when it keeps crying out, keeps believing, keeps standing on God's promises no matter how long it takes. Sometimes the waiting is not about the answer itself, but about what God is doing in you while you wait. Persistence in prayer stretches your faith. It teaches you to lean on God's character instead of demanding your own timing. It burns away the impatience and self-reliance that so often cloud our relationship with Him. In the pressing, in the waiting, in the holding on when everything in you wants to let go, your faith becomes unshakable. You begin to trust Him not only for what He does, but for who He is, and that is a deeper work than any instant answer could ever give you. I've seen people pray for years for loved ones to come to faith, for healing to manifest, for doors to open that seem forever closed, and then, often suddenly, but never truly unexpectedly, the answer came like a flood. Tears turned to joy, mourning turned to dancing, brokenness turned to breakthrough. And every single time the story carried this same thread. They refused to give up. They held on when others told them to quit. They prayed when people laughed at their faith. They kept believing when circumstances screamed it was over. And in the end, heaven moved. You see, God is not moved by casual interest. He is moved by desperate, determined faith. Faith that says, like Jacob, I will not let you go until you bless me. Faith that says, like Elijah, who prayed until the rain came, I will keep praying until the clouds form, until the wind shifts, until the drought ends. That's the kind of faith that touches heaven. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains. That's the kind of faith that refuses to quit until the answer comes. So if you are weary today, if you have prayed and nothing seems to be changing, I want to tell you this: don't give up. Don't walk away. Don't let the delay convince you that God has forgotten you. Every prayer you pray in faith is like a seed planted in the soil. You may not see anything breaking through the ground yet, but under the surface, life is stirring, roots are forming, the answer is on its way. Keep watering it with your prayers. Keep believing even when you can't see, because heaven moves when you don't give up, and your breakthrough might be closer than you think. There is a faith that rises above ordinary belief, a faith that will not bow to circumstances, a faith that will not be silenced by delays or defeated by obstacles. It is the kind of faith that stands tall in the middle of storms and declares, I will not quit until the answer comes. It is not fragile, it is not timid, and it does not retreat when the pressure mounts. It is the faith that refuses to quit, the faith that keeps believing when nothing makes sense, the faith that holds on when the night seems endless. That kind of faith is rare because it is forged in the fire of trials, in the waiting rooms of life, in the seasons when prayers seem unanswered. And yet the heart keeps trusting, keeps hoping, keeps praying anyway. Most people of faith, as long as everything goes their way, they can shout, sing, and praise when the blessings are flowing, when the prayers are answered quickly, when the doors swing open with little effort. But when the answers delay, when the sickness lingers, when the breakthrough seems far off, when the heavens feel silent, that is when true faith is tested. Because real faith is not proven when life is easy. Real faith shines when life is hard. It takes faith to believe God when everything looks impossible. It takes faith to keep praying when every report says it's over. It takes faith to lift your hands in praise when the tears are streaming down your face and nothing has changed yet. And it takes even greater faith to do it day after day after day, refusing to quit no matter how long it takes. Faith that refuses to quit understands something powerful. The silence of God does not mean the absence of God. Just because you can't see the answer yet doesn't mean heaven is not moving. Just because you don't feel anything doesn't mean God is not at work behind the scenes. Faith that refuses to quit stands on the promises of God rather than the evidence of circumstances. It says, I believe because He said it, not because I see it. I trust because He is faithful, not because life is easy. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains because it refuses to be shaken by what the natural eye can see. There is a story of a woman in the Bible who had been sick for 12 long years. She had spent everything she had on doctors, but nothing worked. Every day she woke up in the same pain, the same disappointment, the same hopelessness. But one day she heard about Jesus, and something rose up inside of her. She said to herself, if I can just touch the hem of His garment, I will be healed. And she didn't quit when the crowd was too thick. She didn't quit when it seemed impossible to get close to Him. She didn't quit when her strength was fading. She pushed through the crowd. She pressed through the obstacles. She fought through the weakness until finally she touched him, and instantly healing flowed. That is faith that refuses to quit. It keeps pushing when everyone else gives up. It keeps believing when the odds are stacked against it. It keeps moving forward until the answer comes. Some of you right now feel like you've been waiting too long, praying too long, standing too long with no sign of change. The temptation to quit is real. The enemy whispers, it's never going to happen. God has forgotten you. There's no point in trying anymore. But faith that refuses to quit answers back, God is not a man that he should lie. If he said it, he will do it. If he promised it, he will bring it to pass. I will stand on his word until the day I see it with my own eyes. That kind of faith is not intimidated by time. It is not discouraged by delay. It is not weakened by silence. It grows stronger the longer it waits because it knows the one who promised is faithful. I have watched people give up just before the breakthrough came. They prayed for years, but right before the answer showed up, they let go because it got too hard, too heavy, too long. But I've also seen those who held on, who refused to quit, who kept believing when everything told them to stop. And when the answer came, it came suddenly, it came powerfully, it came in a way that left no doubt that God had been at work the whole time. And every single time, they would say the same thing. I'm so glad I didn't quit. You see, faith that refuses to quit has a language of its own. It says things like, I will believe even if it takes a lifetime. It says, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. It says, I don't know how, I don't know when, but I know my Redeemer lives, and I will see his goodness in my life. That kind of faith will not be silenced by fear or shaken by delay. It is stubborn in the best sense of the word. It digs in its heels and says, I'm not moving until the blessing comes. I'm not letting go until the answer arrives. I'm not giving up because I know the one I'm praying to is faithful. There is power in refusing to quit. There is power in standing your ground in prayer, in declaring God's promises over your life day after day, even when you feel nothing, see nothing, hear nothing. Heaven hears every prayer. God bottles every tear. Not one cry of faith goes unnoticed. And at the right time, in the right way, the answer comes. It may not come the way you expected. It may not come on your timeline. But when it comes, it will come with the weight of God's power behind it, and you will know that every moment of waiting was worth it. So don't quit now. Don't give up because it's hard. Don't let the delay convince you that God has forgotten you. Hold on to his promises with everything in you. Keep praying when it feels like nothing is happening. Keep believing when the night feels too long. Keep standing when everyone else tells you to sit down. Because faith that refuses to quit always sees the victory. It always reaps the harvest. It always experiences the breakthrough. The God who promised is faithful. And if you will refuse to let go, you will see his power in your life in ways that will leave you amazed. There is a strength that does not come from muscles or money or influence. It is not built in gyms or earned in classrooms or handed down through family lines. It is forged in the secret place, in the long nights of waiting, in the seasons where you walk by faith and not by sight. It is called spiritual endurance, and it is the power to keep standing, keep believing, and keep praying when everything in you wants to quit. This kind of endurance is not flashy. It doesn't always make headlines. It is not always celebrated by people because most of it happens out of sight in the quiet moments where you fight battles no one else even knows you're in. But heaven knows, and heaven responds to endurance like that because spiritual endurance is what keeps the fire of faith burning through the cold winds of delay, disappointment, and difficulty. Anyone can start something with excitement. Anyone can pray when the answer comes quickly, when the blessings flow like rain, when doors open as soon as you knock. But it takes endurance to keep praying when the heavens feel like brass. It takes endurance to keep believing when the report is bad again, when the bills pile up higher, when the pain gets worse instead of better. It takes endurance to keep showing up in faith day after day when you've been on your knees for weeks or months or even years with no sign of change. That kind of endurance doesn't come from willpower alone. It comes from a deep trust in the character of God, a trust that says, I may not see it yet, I may not feel it yet, but I know my God is faithful, and I will not stop until I see his hand move. The Bible says those who endure to the end will be saved. There is something about endurance that heaven honors in a way nothing else can replace. When you refuse to quit, when you keep pressing through the storm, when you stand your ground in prayer, no matter how long it takes, something shifts in the spirit realm. The enemy wants you to give up because he knows he cannot stop the hand of God. So his only strategy is to wear you down, to discourage you, to convince you that the waiting means God has forgotten you. But endurance answers back, I will wait as long as it takes because I know the one I serve never fails. There are times in life when the answer does not come quickly because God is building something inside of you that is more important than what you are asking for. You pray for the problem to go away, but God is using the problem to develop a faith that cannot be shaken. You want the trial to end, but God is using the trial to produce endurance, perseverance, character, and hope that will last for the rest of your life. Spiritual endurance is not just about surviving until the answer comes. It's about being transformed while you wait. It's about learning to walk with God not only in the light of answered prayer, but in the darkness of unanswered questions. It is about trusting His heart when you cannot see His hand. I have seen people receive quick answers but remain spiritually shallow because they never had to develop endurance. And when the next storm came, when the next battle rose up, they had no foundation to stand on. But I have also seen people who walked through long, hard seasons where they had to pray, when nothing seemed to be happening, believe when everything looked impossible, and trust when the silence of heaven felt crushing. And when the breakthrough finally came, they stood stronger, their faith unshakable, their roots deep, their lives marked by the power of God in a way that could never be taken away. That is the gift of endurance. It doesn't just get you to the answer, it changes who you are while you wait for it. Spiritual endurance keeps you from making rash decisions in the heat of the battle. It keeps you steady when fear tries to push you into panic, when doubt tries to drive you into despair. Endurance says, I will not be moved. I will not quit. I will not give up my ground no matter how fierce the storm gets. That kind of faith frustrates the enemy because he doesn't know what to do with someone who won't quit. He can throw everything at you. The delays, the disappointments, the doubts, but when you have endurance, you outlast the attack. And often, victory comes not because you fought harder, because you simply refuse to walk off the battlefield. Sometimes endurance is not loud. It's not always shouting and dancing and declaring. Sometimes it looks like quiet faithfulness, getting up again, praying again, believing again, even when you feel nothing. Sometimes endurance is just the decision to stay in the fight one more day, to believe one more time, to keep going when you want to stop. And every time you do, every time you refuse to quit, you are building spiritual strength inside of you. You may not see it, but heaven sees it. And one day you will realize that while you were waiting on God, He was shaping you, strengthening you, preparing you for the very thing you were asking for. The power of spiritual endurance is that it does not just lead to answered prayers, it leads to a deeper walk with God. When you endure, you learn to lean on His promises like never before. You discover that His word is true even when everything around you says otherwise. You find that His presence is enough even before the answer comes. And you realize that what you needed most was not the thing you were asking for, but the God who never left you in the waiting. So if you feel like quitting today, if the battle has been long and the night has been dark, I want to tell you that every moment of endurance matters. Every prayer you have prayed, every tear you have cried, every day you have stood your ground in faith is producing something powerful in your life. The answer will come, the breakthrough will come, the victory will come, but even before it does, God is giving you the strength to endure. And when it is over, you will not just have the answer, you will have a testimony, a faith that will carry you through the rest of your life, and a relationship with God that is deeper than you ever imagined. That is the power of spiritual endurance. There are seasons in life when everything around you feels dark, when the weight of circumstances presses so heavily on your soul that even the simplest prayer feels like it takes all the strength you have left. You wake up and it's dark in your heart. You go through the day carrying invisible burdens, smiling on the outside while you are breaking on the inside. Night comes, and instead of peace, the silence is filled with questions, fears, and doubts that circle in your mind until sleep finally overtakes you in exhaustion. These are the moments when you wonder if the light will ever break through again. You wonder if the prayer you've been praying for so long is even reaching heaven. You wonder if the darkness will win. But I came to tell you something today. Darkness does not get the final word. It never has, and it never will. No matter how thick the night feels, no matter how loud the silence seems, no matter how impossible the situation looks, the story is not over because the light always comes. It may not come on your timeline, it may not come the way you imagine, but the light always breaks through. And the key to seeing it, the key to living long enough to feel the warmth of the sun again, is not to quit praying in the middle of the darkness. Because so many people give up just before the dawn breaks. They walk away, they stop believing, they let the weight crush their hope. And if they had held on just a little longer, if they had prayed through just one more night, they would have seen the miracle waiting on the other side. There is something about the darkness that makes you feel alone, as if heaven itself has closed its doors. But let me tell you the truth, silence is not the same as absence. The fact that you cannot hear God speaking does not mean He has stopped listening. The fact that you cannot see anything changing does not mean He has stopped working. Darkness often comes before the most powerful moves of God, because in the darkness faith is tested, trust is deepened, and prayers become more than just words. They become the cries of a desperate heart clinging to God alone. I think about the night before Jesus was crucified. He went into the garden and prayed until his sweat became like drops of blood. He prayed through the darkness. He prayed through the loneliness. He prayed through the fear of what was coming, and heaven seemed silent. No angel stopped the soldiers from arresting him. No voice boomed from heaven to comfort him. But even in the silence, God was at work. The plan of redemption was unfolding. The victory of the cross was being written in the shadows of that night. The darkness was real, but it was not the end, because 3 days later the stone rolled away, the tomb was empty, and light exploded into the world like never before. That's what I want you to hear today. The darkness you are in right now is not the end of the story. It might be the middle. It might be the part where your faith is being stretched farther than you thought it could go, the part where you can't see any way forward, the part where you feel like you are hanging on by a thread. But if you will keep praying, if you will keep believing, if you will keep knocking on heaven's door, the light will come. It always does. God has never left a child of His in the darkness forever. Sometimes the hardest part is that you don't know how close you are to the breakthrough. It might be one more day. It might be one more prayer. It might be one more night of holding on when everything in you wants to let go. That's why the enemy tries so hard to convince you to quit in the darkness, because he knows the light is coming. He knows the answer is on its way. He knows the breakthrough is already being formed, and if he can get you to give up before it arrives, he can rob you of the miracle God has prepared for you. I have seen people pray for years with no sign of change, and then suddenly the darkness lifted, the breakthrough came, the answer exploded into their lives, and they stood there weeping with joy saying, I almost gave up. I almost stopped praying. I almost let go. But I'm so glad I didn't quit. And the thing they always say afterward is that the light was worth every long night they endured. Because when the answer finally comes, when God finally moves, when the miracle finally arrives, it makes the darkness fade like a forgotten dream. The beauty of praying through the darkness is that when the light finally comes, you don't just have the answer, you have a story. You have a testimony of God's faithfulness that no one can take away from you. You can look someone in the eye who is standing where you once stood and tell them, I know it feels impossible. I know it feels like God has forgotten you. I know it feels like the night will never end. But I promise you the light will come. I have been there. I have cried those tears. I have prayed those prayers. And I have seen the goodness of God break through the darkest night. That kind of testimony has power because it was forged in real pain, in real waiting, in real faith that refused to quit. So if you are in the darkness right now, if your heart is heavy, if your prayers feel like they are hitting the ceiling and falling back down, I want to encourage you, keep going. Pray through the tears. Pray through the silence. Pray through the fear, because the night will not last forever. The light is already on its way. You may not see it yet, but it is coming. Every prayer you pray in faith is like a match struck against the darkness, and sooner or later the whole sky will blaze with the glory of God's answer. Don't quit before you see it. Don't let the weight of the night convince you that the dawn isn't real. The same God who spoke light into existence in the very beginning is still speaking today, and one word from Him can shatter the longest night of your life. Hold on, pray through, because the light is coming, and when it comes, it will be worth every moment you spent in the dark. Sometimes when you are right on the edge of a miracle, it doesn't feel like it. In fact, when the breakthrough is closer than you think, often the battle feels harder than ever before, the night feels darker, the waiting feels longer, the prayers feel heavier. You wonder if you have the strength to pray one more time, to believe one more day, to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. That is because the enemy always fights the hardest when he knows his time is short. He throws fear at you. He throws discouragement at you. He whispers lies to your heart saying, it will never happen. God has forgotten you. Nothing is changing. But what you don't see is that the answer might already be on the way. The walls might already be trembling. The chains might already be loosening. And the miracle might already be closer than it has ever been before. I've heard it said that the darkest part of the night is right before the dawn. And that is so often true in the spiritual battles we face. Right before the light breaks through, right before the victory arrives, right before the prayer is answered, the weight feels the heaviest. That is the moment when most people give up. They stop praying because they assume the silence means nothing is happening. They walk away because they think the delay means the answer isn't coming. But if they could only see what heaven sees, if they could only glimpse behind the curtain of the unseen realm, they would know that the breakthrough is already moving toward them, that the miracle is already in motion, that the answer is already closer than they think. Think about the walls of Jericho. God told his people to march around the city once a day for 6 days, and then 7 times on the 7th day before the walls would fall. Can you imagine what that felt like? Every day they walked, and nothing happened, day after day. The walls stood tall and unmoved. I wonder if on day 5 or 6 some of them started thinking, this isn't working. Why are we even doing this? Maybe we should just go home. But what they didn't know was that with every step, with every lap around those walls, something was building. Obedience was stacking on top of obedience. Faith was stacking on top of faith. Persistence was stacking on top of persistence. And on that 7th day, on that final lap, when they lifted their voices in a shout, the walls didn't just crack, they collapsed completely. The breakthrough came suddenly, but it came because they didn't quit when nothing seemed to be happening. That is how it so often works in our lives. You pray, and nothing seems to change. You pray again, and the walls still look the same. You keep praying, keep believing, keep standing on God's promises, and day after day it feels like you are walking in circles with no progress. But what you don't see is that in the spirit realm, things are shifting. God is aligning circumstances. He is moving hearts. He is arranging divine appointments. He is fighting battles you cannot see. And if you will keep going, keep praying, keep believing, there will come a moment when the walls suddenly fall, when the answer suddenly appears, when the miracle suddenly comes rushing into your life like a flood. So many people give up one prayer too soon. They stop knocking one day before the door swings open. They stop asking right before the answer comes. They stop believing right before the breakthrough breaks through. And the enemy celebrates because he knows he couldn't defeat them. He just had to get them to defeat themselves by quitting too soon. That's why I am telling you today with everything in me, don't stop now. Don't quit praying now. Don't walk away now. Your breakthrough could be closer than you think, and if you hold on a little longer, if you pray through one more time, you might wake up to find the miracle waiting on your doorstep. I've watched this happen in people's lives over and over. I've seen the mother who prayed for decades for her son to come back to faith, and just when she was about to give up, just when she had almost resigned herself to thinking it would never happen, he walked through the church doors one Sunday morning and gave his life to Christ. I've seen families pray for years for financial provision, holding on through seasons of lack and struggle, only to have the answer come suddenly through a door they never expected, through a blessing they couldn't have arranged themselves. And every single time, when the breakthrough came, they looked back and realized it had been closer than they thought even in the moments when it felt a million miles away. You see, we serve a God who works in ways we cannot always see or understand. His timing is not our timing. His ways are not our ways, but his faithfulness is sure. And when he makes a promise, he keeps it. When he says he will provide, he will provide. When he says he will heal, he will heal. When he says he will make a way, he will make a way. It may not come when you want it to. It may not come how you expect it to. But it will come right on time in the way that brings the most glory to him and the most blessing to you. That is why you cannot quit. That is why you cannot let go. That is why you cannot stop praying, stop believing, stop standing on his promises, because you never know when the next prayer will be the prayer that tips the scales, when the next day will be the day the answer arrives, when the next act of faith will be the moment heaven moves in power. So if you are weary today, if you are wondering whether it's even worth it to keep going, let me tell you this. It is always worth it to hold on to God. It is always worth it to pray one more time. It is always worth it to believe one more day, because your breakthrough might be closer than you think. And when it comes, it will come with such power, such clarity, such beauty, that you will fall to your knees in awe and say, God, I almost gave up, but I'm so glad I didn't. Don't stop now. Don't quit too soon. The walls are about to fall. The dawn is about to break. The answer is already on its way. Hold on, pray through, because your breakthrough is closer than you think.